Greetings, readers and friends. Harvey Michaels here. I'm thrilled to welcome you to our adventure into Danshui, President Plunge, Book 1, Evacuate or Pay. It was an electrifying story to write, and I can't wait to share some with you today. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Your support means the world to me. Thank you kindly. Okay, here we go. Chapter 10, Part 2, Central PD Crisis Center. Inside the crisis center, some officers are getting touchy. Look at the map. Veins protrude on the face of the head of officer training, Chief Wen. It's the strongest super typhoon ever. They couldn't enter a submersible without surfacing. It's impossible. They must have turned into the Fisherman's Wharf port area. They must be right there under their noses. We have to act before it's too late. Whose resources do you want to sacrifice? The officer arguing with him is equally upset. We all saw what the storm looked like on the Guandu Bridge. The road from Old Town Danshui to the port is closed from the Hongmaocang wall collapse and mudslide. The typhoon is raging. We have to wait this out until the eye of the storm passes over. The colonel ignores the absurd notion of a submersible in Fisherman's Wharf port waters, and he heard enough squabbling about the best time to get their men out of the van underwater at the port. He wants to redirect attention anywhere else. Have we heard from Bali Police Department directly yet? Amateurs! Colonel Han paces with one hand on his angled chin and the other on his hip. Get me every single phone call record in and out of BLPD. Look for anomalies, obvious or possible. I want that information an hour ago. Bali PD. PP, have you seen the TV news? Sergeant Bao sits as timid as a drunk driver sobered up and waiting for a lawyer. No, Sarge, what about it? PP doesn't look up from her tablet. We're all over the news now. We're a laughing stock. Sergeant Bao looks like he is about to cry. PP? Yeah, Sarge. Take the phones off the hook for a while longer, okay? Whatever you say, Sarge. PP scrunches down lower in the chair, cracking gum as fast and loud as she could as booming claps of thunder join in the howling and crashing all around her. Central PD Crisis Center. Get BLPD on the phone! The colonel rages at more dereliction of duty he learned of. Their phone's still busy, sir. The head of communications cannot believe it himself. We're still sending email and line messages. They aren't picking up any line calls either. They must be getting a lot of media inquiries since the news stories broke. That's a small precinct there, probably less than a dozen staff total, Chief Lai adds quietly while pressing his temples to stop a growing headache. What police department in 2016 has such a rotten system they can't handle multiple calls? Colonel Han growled. Apparently that would be BLPD, Colonel Han. Chief Lai was the only one who would answer the rhetorical question. Amateurs! Theo, the 119 call is passed from operator to superior. Only storm sounds, no voices. Where's it coming from? A cell phone at Danshui Port, the operator answers. Pinpoint that location. Keep the line open. Keep talking to them. Assume they can hear you. Find out whose phone it is and let their emergency contacts know. The supervisor can't think of anything else at that point, but she feels a flicker of excitement at the potential for a unique situation. Okay. The operator is not pleased, but she will stay with this one call if that's what she's ordered to do. They just processed nonstop a record-breaking 119 call load in the last hour. Some were very urgent, but most were third parties phoning for situations that were already being handled. Caller, we're going to find you. Can you hear me? We're going to find you, caller. Can you hear me? We're going to find you. Theo is shaking badly. Hypothermia is affecting him more and more. His teeth chatter nonstop and he mumbles, "The water is so cold, Lord. Help me make it through this so I can be a better man." His broken limbs don't hurt so badly now, and even in Theo's numb thinking, he knows that is a bad sign. He doesn't remember being tossed higher on the jutting rocks, but he is glad for the higher space wedged tightly into another downward angling seat of stone. A salting wind blows his swelling cheeks and eyelids out. It was such great fun hanging his head out the car window on fast stretches of road as a young boy. Not fun at all now. Theo's face and neck sting after constant attacks from typhoon gales and horizontal bee-stinging spray. Theo forces himself to keep his head back. He has a fearful sensation if he leans forward at all, he will fall into the sea. He wants badly to look at his phone again. With the feeling going away in his fingers, Theo could barely call 119 earlier, and his battered, swollen, frozen joints couldn't bring the phone to his ear. He clumsily shoved the phone halfway under his belt and stared at the lighted screen until he felt like he would tip over. Port Police Headquarters. "Oh, good God! Chief Pan! The 119 switchboard says Wang Sanbao's driver's phone made an emergency call from what must be the corner of the seawall up where they launched." Chief Chen leaps up with the phone in his hand, shouting the news. Chief Pan flies back down half the floor of stairs he was climbing when the sergeant cried out the news. He races around to the front door and yanks it open, filling the foyer with shrieking typhoon wails. "Paul! Paul Hu!" Chief Hu yells at the top of his lungs. "Come back in! We need your Humvee!" Paul sprints to return the 30 meters he had gone, recognizing the urgency in his new friend's voice. The kidnapping van driver called 119. His phone is over the seawall in the back corner on the rocks. Chief Pan shouts as Paul approaches. Paul's mustache face changes instantly into a teeth-clenching mask of seriousness, how he came to be called Foxface. In a different, more powerful voice, he shouts upward toward anyone upstairs who can help. "Get me strong rope!" He thinks of something else. "And a thin, powerful flashlight!" Paul looks down at the extra-large carpeted rubber mat under their feet. "Chief, I need someone strong to go with me. Now!" "Sergeant Chen!" Chief Pan calls out without asking for an explanation. "On me, now!" "Help me roll this up, Chief," Paul says, bending over, rolling up the oversized mat under his feet. They are running to the Humvee, the rolled-up, rubber-bottomed carpet mat unwieldy, weighty on their shoulders, distorting their strides, but they don't slow down. Typhoon winds push them hard to the right, but they keep slicing diagonally toward the Humvee. 3 other officers show up behind them at the door and step out to help. Paul and the sergeant don't wait for the others, who never catch up. The 3 move tentatively, not sure of themselves, their first time out in the violently blowing super typhoon. Paul and Sergeant Chen are off the driveway, running half a dozen car lengths in a direct line to the Humvee in front of them. The soaked grass is uneven. Sergeant Chen steps into a hole, and they fall down hard. Paul's face greets a branch, and his mouth is numb before the pain comes. He feels warmth and tastes coppery blood in his mouth. Paul shouts, spitting blood, "Let's go! Let's go!" They get up and have to roll up a length of the spilled open mat. They wrestle it up on their shoulders again and begin once more, a slower run this time. "Can you tie knots, Sarge?" Paul shouts out, panting as they run. "Any knot you want, I can make it," he shouts back. The sergeant is all business, and Paul is glad of it. Surely time is of the essence. It is amazing the driver is still alive in the cold water this long, and he can't possibly have much more time. Paul explains his plan as they toss and wrestle the big mat in through the back of the Humvee. The rolled up mat goes all the way to the front windshield, and a stub of it hangs out the back hatch window. Sergeant Chen jumps in the passenger side and starts making the knots Paul asked him to. Paul grasps the rolled up mat as tight as he can while he drives in case it wants to slide out the back. He's glad the Humvee has automatic transmission so he can drive one-handed. The heavy vehicle slides around as they speed up and U-turn in the overflowing runoff that turned the street into a shallow river. Less than 5 minutes since Chief Penn called him back into Port Police headquarters, Paul crashes the Humvee through the back gate Sergeant Chen points to. The sergeant assumed incorrectly that he would have to jump out and open the gate. Illuminated by bright Humvee headlights, Paul ignores the insane wind and rain and drives as fast as possible, weaving and sliding in tight turns through the truck-trailer-sized white concrete blocks placed randomly there for the port expansion project. They accelerate along parallel to the seawall, which blocks much of the hellish wind and surf spray. It creates a high-speed, bizarre liquid froth and spray shooting effect of flying ceiling, some cannonading the passenger side roof, most flying over their Humvee as they drive the 100-meter length of seawall. The higher tide and typhoon-swelled waves not only feed this freakish, blasting, wind-driven white ceiling effect, but also create a gut-wrenching illusion that the sea has risen to the top of the wall. Paul swerves around the waving lighted construction mannequins and races 25 meters further, stopping before the corner where the seawall meets the jetty. The Humvee, on loan from the military, has no siren, so Paul honks his horn the whole way, remembering to turn on the high beam lights and rooftop spotlights as he skids to a stop. Paul and Sergeant Chen both begin yelling out for the driver, hoping Theo will hear them. "Officer Ping! Officer Ping!" Theo. A few minutes felt like a few hours passing. Theo dares to look down at the phone halfway under his belt just as a large wave rolls over him. His head connects with a sick thud on stone behind him, but he does not lose consciousness. "Thank you, God, you woke me up again." His throat found a way by itself to not swallow as much water, locking shut when the wave struck his face. But his nose refuses to go numb or otherwise cooperate. It stings nonstop from all the salt water he has blown out of his nostrils. From his stomach to his throat and up, everything feels raw from vomiting salt water. Everything hurts. It hurts to grin. Theo laughs soundlessly as something funny he realizes. "Good thing, waterproof phone." His smile fades along with his focus, fading, numb. He thinks he's lost his mind just as he feels himself passing out because he imagines he hears his name being called. Sergeant Chen and Paul Hu. As Sergeant Chen concentrates on finishing the knots, Paul barely muscles the rubber mat out by himself through the back of the Humvee, grunting and heaving it. All the time he yells for Theo as loudly as he can. He quickly drags the mat over near the corner of the wall's end and drops it there. Then he scrambles to a spot on the wall and leaps up to see over the edge. Paul ignores as best he can the cold and the wind until a thick, high-speed spray of wave slams into his face, driving him down off the head-high seawall. The instant Paul gets his feet steadied back under him, he jumps back up with the flashlight ready. The small flashlight is powerful, and a quick scan with the LED beam picks up Theo's image and casts a shadow beyond him just as a wave slams Theo back against the rocks. He looks unconscious. His skin is too white. Officer Ping! Officer Ping! We are going to get you out of there now! Get ready! Think of your wife! Officer Ping! Think of your children! Ping! Don't you give up now! Paul yells nonstop, his voice straining for more volume, even after he jumps back down and motions for Sergeant Chen to come and put their plan into action. Officer Ping, hey, think of your wife. Here we are. I'm coming down there for you. Think of your children. Hang on, man. Don't you let go now. Officer Chen pulls on the mat and Paul stops him. No, first put the knots on my feet. Quickly. That's right. The sergeant made a double looping slide knot to put around Theo, which Paul holds in his own arms. Paul tries holding the flashlight in his mouth, slippery with his own blood. Paul refuses to feel that mouth wound and prepares his thoughts as he takes the flashlight out of his mouth, confident he can hold it steady between his teeth. He shouts and screams more to Theo while he waits for Sergeant Chen to bind the rope around Paul's ankle. Paul and the sergeant keep yelling their loudest as they heave the mat over the side. It takes 2 times because the first time heavier spray from a wave slams it back at them. The second time, as they throw the top of the mat over, Paul leaps over the ledge himself, carrying it over, yelling the whole time, "Officer Ping!" At the seawall and rock jetty corner, while crawling down the large mat, clutching the left mat edge for every step to fight against the surf and pave a way for Theo, Paul enters a new terror. Before each wave envelopes him, the momentary throat lump pause between waves. Paul never wavers, never ceases climbing down, crabbing over to Theo. But those brief, unpredictable fractions of seconds between looming barrages compound the fearful deadliness. Dread torques on and off and on in Paul. More core threatening than screaming winds, roaring surf sounds, or the inevitable next crashing wave. Still, his eyes never waver from Theo. His voice, through flashlight holding gritted teeth, never breaks off. Sergeant Chen pulls them up from the backside seawall. Theo groans weakly once, to Paul's great relief. "Okay, Ping, we're here. Let's go. Think of your wife. Think of your children. Stay with me, Ping. Hang on." As they reach the top of the wall and the last wave and blast of wind tries to steal their victory, Paul sees Theo mouth something. Paul keeps shouting over and over, "Don't give up, Ping. Think of your wife. Think of your children." It alarmed Paul at how cold Theo feels, like a man-sized piece of refrigerated meat in a supermarket cooler. They pull Theo into the front seat of the Humvee. The engine has been running with the heater set on high, blowing hot air. "Think of your wife, Ping." Paul starts in again and starts rubbing Theo's arms and thighs, adjusting his touch when Theo's pain reveals broken bones. Paul sees red and blue flashing ambulance lights approaching through the Humvee's back window. Theo's mouth moves again, and Paul barely makes out Theo's hoarse uttering, "Again. Say it again. Don't stop. My wife. My children." "That's right, Officer Ping. Your wife is waiting for you. Your children are coming. Don't stop fighting, Ping. Don't you give up, Ping. Do you hear me? Ping!" The ambulance turns out to be a large city tow truck driven by paramedics. One of them has been on a line call with the hospital, conferring on first steps to treat hypothermia. They park in the bright circle of light in front of the Humvee. The paramedics are heartened. Theo's vital signs are there, but aware he is still very much in danger. They hurry to cut his wet clothes off with surgical scissors and wrap him with blankets and warmed hot water bottles before leaving. The tow truck ambulance reverses away, 3 in the front cab now, only minutes after arriving. Ignoring the deafening surf sound and the hissing spray that hammers the Humvee passenger side and rockets over their head, Paul steps toward the driver's side, soaked and exhausted, but smiling hugely. For the first time, he looks ahead closely at the flashing construction mannequins and sees how well they are made. His mood dips. This is far from over. Sergeant Chen walks up to him and wraps him in a crushing hug and shakes Paul. What Paul thought was Sergeant Chen shaking him turns out to be the sergeant sobbing and exclaiming as he cries and hugs Paul. "He's alive! We did it! You did it!" "We did it," Paul insists between squeezes in Sergeant Chen's grasp. Paul's voice cracks from yelling at Theo. Arms pinned to his sides, Paul looks through the surreal head-high ceiling of shooting spray, past the eerie shining steel ramp and the lighted waving construction mannequins to see Theo Ping made it out onto the road. He thinks what a most peculiar sight they must make, embracing, still out in the raging super typhoon. People would think we are mad. Paul notices a salty, warm flow around his tongue. He remembers falling. He needs stitches in his mouth. "Officer Hu! He's alive!" Sergeant Chen bellows his victory cheer and resumes sob-shaking Paul as a tumultuous wave explodes and dissipates horizontally barely over their heads. Apparently, the sergeant is nowhere near as tired as I feel. Paul smiles and sighs. Maybe we are both delirious. Central PD Crisis Center. The Crisis Command Center anxiously listened and waited for help to arrive, then silently listened along to the seawall rescue picked up in the call from Theo's phone. First, only the Humvee horn, barely heard over howling wind and surf sounds. Then, faint shouting became louder and discernible on Theo's uninterrupted emergency call, which became famous around the world within the hour. It will not take long to put together the same hero on the Guandu Bridge, that take charge, bloody mouth officer who went hanging upside down, crawling over to rescue Theo in the scariest seas. Once released by the Bali Police Department, the dash cam will show the whole rescue clearly in the Humvee's blazing lights, all except Paul and Theo on the surf side. Taiwanese will see and instantly love their new hero. Paul's heroism will be displayed, caught, and digitized for all to see, and see him straining to shout over and over for Theo to fight on for his wife and children. When the 119 operator confirms Theo is on his way to the hospital, breathing on his own and conscious, chairs around the crisis center tables fly backward, some crashing to the floor as men leap to their feet. For the second time that afternoon, the Central PD Crisis Center erupts in a raucous celebration. Just 20 minutes earlier, every one of them dejected, they now rejoice jubilantly, holding nothing back. Everyone's eyes fill with joyful tears. Each of them kicks up their heels in their own way with fist pumps, small victory dances, slaps on tabletops, everyone cheering in a sudden intense roar. End Book 1. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the reading this time. Please leave a comment if you did. What did you think? Remember, sharing is caring, so please do tell a friend who would like to join us here. If you are enjoying the journey, I'd be so grateful if you would be a supporter and pick up a copy of Danshui President Plunge on Amazon and leave a review. Until next time, take care. I look forward to seeing you here again. See you then.